My name's Tony. Hey, sorry, Nick. Sorry.
No worries.
Start again.
I quite liked it, to be fair. So my name is George.
My name is Neil.
And this is Biz Stories. Tony, who is a marketing director. He has a lot of experience in marketing. And he's going to give us some really interesting insights today. So Tony, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and sort of your marketing journey as well?
Yeah, I'm a old school turned, what the gamer turned poacher, old school media guy turned what we used to call new media a long time ago. We now call digital or even online. And when I was, I think, 21, I actually dropped out of college. I was doing a physics degree at the time and got a job because I was desperate for cash, which I think is probably a scenario a lot of people will be familiar with. Yeah. I accidentally fell into a job in media, which was basically selling advertising. I did that while waiting to go back to college to finish my degree. That was always the plan. And then, as is the case when you're that age, you turn around and lots of things have happened and many years have passed. And when I was about 30, so it was 10 years, I decided to stop telling myself that I was going back to school and to start to tell myself that I needed to take what I was doing more seriously. And I thought, I can either bin the 10 years of experience that I've just gained in media and go back to college and become a scientist, which is what I always wanted to do. Or I could realize, actually, I've been in media for 10 years and perhaps I could throw my not inconsiderable weight behind that. So that's what I did. And within a year, I'd managed to get into a management role in a media business. So I went into what we then called, I was a sales manager, then I became a sales director. I did that for some time. This is still in a media business. This is now selling media, which at the time was just really advertising. But because advertising effectively meant marketing my customers' businesses, that's when I really started getting into marketing. So at the age of about 25 onwards, and I actually went back to school in the evenings and I did a marketing degree and eventually went on and did a postgraduate diploma in marketing as well, because it helped me with my job then. So I kind of crossed off physics. I wasn't going to go back and do physics and pushed ahead with the marketing stuff. So I had quite a successful career in media. I started off in Wales. I ended up running the biggest commercial radio station in Wales, which was called Real Radio at the time. We were actually bigger than, we were significantly bigger than the BBC, which was our claim to fame. More audience than the BBC on a lot less resource. And then I was headhunted to come back to Swansea. And I came back to Swansea as the managing director of the Evening Post, which is the local newspaper. You probably know it. It also publishes Command the Journal, the Llanelli Star. It's got a number of magazine titles associated, and then a burgeoning website. And my role, because of my background, and I have to say more my interests than my professional experience, my role was to transform. It's called digital transformation. You might have heard the term. My role was to transform the South Wales Evening Post into a digital organisation. We did that over a period of about 2 years. It was a big project. I went up to London to work on other transformation projects, bumped into a pal of mine who I've known back in the radio days. And he asked me to go and run his magazine business in London, which again was a transformation job, right? So I began starting to specialise in moving businesses from non-digital, traditional to the new, as it was then. Did that for a couple of years in London, and then, as is often the case with these sorts of businesses, startups, the funding got pulled, and I ended back up on my butt back in Swansea just before Christmas, wondering what I was going to do next. And then I completely accidentally fell into consulting. I used to have...
How was it accidentally?
It's literally because a number of contacts heard that I was looking for work, or I was out of my job, and asked if I would come in and help them out on a short-term basis. Can you come and do this for me? Can you come and do that? So I had a couple of months of doing that. And after about a year, the first year was great. It was very easy, straightforward, sort of reputation, contacts. But that starts to change when you're out of the industry. And things started to get a little bit tougher. So myself and Mark, who's not been able to make it yet, we decided we wanted to be a business rather than be individual consultants like we were both. We decided to band together and create an organization. And because we're marketing people by background, I'm more sales marketing, he's more marketing sales. And we're both big style into technology and into digital and that kind of stuff. We decided we wanted to be an inbound marketing agency, which is where we are today. So we're a couple of years into that journey, and we've learned loads. We've niched even further. That's it. It's been it feels like a very long time when I look back, but once you get to my age, I think everything happened very, very recently. You just forget all the past.
You're only 25, Tony. Like, come on.
I know. I do look younger. I know it's a curse, Neil.
Okay. I'll start. I'd like to ask you, how was the feeling of not being able to find a work for a period of time? Like, how did it feel like? Was it scary? And what did you do? Like, did you just sit there and wait for it to change, or did you kind of be proactive to actually find work at that moment where that work?
Yeah, it's really scary, especially after a career where I initially changed jobs every couple of years, and I always changed for a promotion. I always got more money, more responsibility, and then within the one business, to say the national radio station, I rose through the ranks, if you like. So I very much had a career of moving forward and growing and attaining, and always with a real sense of security. Back then, it wasn't quite job for life, right? Like really back in the day, but you had no inkling of what was coming. You had no inkling that the internet particularly was going to disrupt everything to the extent it did, and especially media. So music and media are two massively disrupted sectors, massively disrupted. And I would still be in media now if it wasn't for the internet. I'd still be in a job, I'm sure. So absolutely, yeah, it was terrifying. And it's felt terrifying ever since, frankly, as on your own in business. It's as much about hustling as anything, if I can use that word. And actually the trick for a business like ours is now transforming our business from a hustling business to a proper business. That's where we are at the minute. We're in a phase where we've grown to a point. We're a bit stuck for various reasons, and we need to now make the leap to becoming a scaling business, as it's called. So it's still scary, but I do believe, and I think at the heart of your question is, you have to be an entrepreneur these days. As a coming out of college, even if you don't go to college, if you just come out of school, you have to look for the opportunity, and you have to take the opportunity, because it doesn't come to you anymore. If it ever did, and I'm not sure it ever did, but it certainly doesn't now.
Yeah, I was going to touch upon what you said before, that you started in physics and then went almost on an unorthodox road into sort of media, and which I think is great. That's something that we want to encourage more students to do, especially now when the job market is absolutely all over the place.
So it's a really good point, George, because I actually, my course in science was set when I was 10-year-old, and I decided I wanted to be an astronaut, and because that was quite a big thing at the time. It wasn't quite in the 60s, Neo, before you go there. It was a bit after that. They'd already landed on the moon and all that kind of stuff. But I wrote to NASA as a 10-year-old. I actually wrote to NASA and I said, what do I need to do to be an astronaut? And they wrote back, which is just like amazing. They sent me this big pamphlet full of stuff, and they basically told me I needed a science degree, so a physics degree or a maths degree. Most of the other degrees aren't really worth having, but physics or maths. And they said that I would probably, all the physicists among you will get that joke. That's very much a physics joke, that is. And they said that you needed 3 to 5 years experience, PhD, and experience in your field. So that was my career set out, right? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a scientist. So I did O levels as it was then. I did A levels. I did physics, maths, and electronics at A level. I got into university already. My choices were, my horizons were broadening because I actually did physics and philosophy, which is a very unusual mix. It's not unheard of, but most people do physics and mathematics. But I was already trying to touch base with that other side of me, that more story, narrative, philosophical side of myself, you know. So I actually studied science, hard science, physics, you know, and philosophy. Turns out, of course, our philosophers, classical Western philosophers that we know and love, Socrates and those guys, they were scientists. They were they were kind of proto-scientists, right? That's what they did. And even Newton himself considered himself a philosopher. You know, I think his great book was something like Principia Philosophicus Mathematicus, something along those lines, so the principles of philosophies of mathematics. Yeah. So that kind of, even then it was a little bit kind of weird, but I hit on the job I hit on. I came out of school because I had to, because I was skint, right? And I had to get a job, and I completely accidentally landed up doing what I was doing. I was applying for everything. I was applying for all sorts of different stuff. I got an interview with the newspaper who thought I was far too city. That's what they called me. I was far too city. But they sent me over to another newspaper and they said, you'd fit in well there. And I did. And literally that was it then for like 30 years. Completely accidental. I never saw it coming. I'd never have chosen it. In fact, on my entire pathway up until that point, and bear in mind I was about 21, had been science, had been hardcore science. I was a scientist, you know, experimental physicist, applied physics and all that kind of gubbins and bang.
You were basically a hustler.
I prefer to call it entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly that. Exactly. And what I think happened, like you're talking about, Neil, like hustlers, I landed, saw an opportunity. I was only going to do it for a few years until I got a bit of money and I went back to school, like I said to you. But I thought I can earn a lot of money here. And money's always been important to me, you know, as a salesperson.
It's these small things. For example, a lot of people would like just leave their job because they don't like it, but then don't think about the consequences of, I'm not going to get paid. So who's going to pay my rent? Who's going to pay my food? Who's going to pay my water? Instead of having that job and going and finding another job, which is it's a very difficult dilemma.
That was it. That was exactly it. That was the plan. But as it transpired, I was good at it and I could do it. And I succeeded and I grew and developed and earned more and more money. And, you know, sales, media, whichever you want to call it, gave me an extremely good living. You know, I've got a very nice house in a very nice part of Swansea, 2 kids, dog, BMW, all on the strength of what I was able to sell. So yeah, but the key part was it was an accident. When I was in college, I was in school doing options. You know, I chose science because I wanted to be an astronaut, right? I didn't really want to be an astronaut. I didn't seriously want to be I did when I was 10, but it just set my path. You know, I'm a scientist. That's what I do. So, and then I did my A levels and I'm a scientist. That's what I do. And then I applied for university to do physics because I'm a scientist, because that's what I do. And then bang, 2 years later, I'm working in media.
Yeah. It just shows you like not everything goes to plan. You need to be open-minded and ready to take any route that life throws at you. I was just going to ask a little bit about inbound. Like, could you tell us a bit about it? So your approach as well. And if you're involved in the recruitment, like what kind of candidates do you look for? What do you look for in young people?
So it's a very interesting area. And I think we're at the wrong side of the growth curve. Because we're still in introduction potentially of inbound. So there's a difference in inbound marketing and outbound marketing. And the easiest way to describe it is that outbound marketing is where you go and interrupt people. And inbound marketing is where you rely on their interest to drive them to you, okay? So there are elements of outbound within inbound and elements of inbound within outbound as well. And they increasingly become a little bit unclear as differences, but you can think of the outbound salesperson as what I used to do, you know, knocking on doors, Do you want to buy my stuff? No. Go to the next one. Do you want to buy my stuff? No. Go to the next one. Do you want to buy my stuff? No. Go to the next one. Do you want to buy my stuff? Yes. Hurrah. We kind of want to build an environment in which the customer is going to get what they need, is going to receive high value. It's largely driven by web. It's largely driven by automation. It's largely driven by things like keyword analysis, understanding the customer, right? So that's the big difference. However, it like for all businesses, if you're in a highly competitive area, it's difficult to stand out. The rules of business still apply. You still need a competitive advantage. And it's probably fair to say our competitive advantage is our ability to sell, right? So we get on the list. It doesn't matter. You can compete against 4, 5, 10 different agencies. If you're the best at doing selling, then you'll get the gig. So, but we have moved into what we call inbound sales, which is a slightly different perspective of sales to the one that may be in your mind.
I think you have another competitive advantage as well, which I think like you don't realize what it is. No, not that.
Not the hair, no.
But maybe the eyes. But okay, let's get serious. Okay, so what I would say one of your competitive advantage with Mark would be is that you guys are the bosses of your business. So if and you're very experienced, it's not like you're just out in the market, created a business and you're just learning what's happening. I would say that if a client had a problem, they go complain to you, not to the manager. Like, these huge businesses such as KPMG, you go to the manager, you'd never go to the CEO. You go both the founders, co-founders of this organization.
You mean that hierarchical difference? You mean that it's... Yeah.
Yes. So he's the boss. Like if someone had a problem with what's happening with their business, because they go to him. So that's what brings a niche market as well. That would be my opinion.
It's a good shout, right? But consider this as a counterpoint to that, right? If you're in a really big organization, the chances are you're not going to buy services from us because we're too small, right? So if you're capable of buying from KMPG, you're never going to come. So we're not really competitive in that perspective. But even worse, right? There's a little human consideration here, and that is we all unconsciously make judgments about people, and I see my customer's perspective of me change. So when I'm the boss of the agency and I'm talking to them to do the sale, and we're discussing and I'm consulting with them, right? And I might be talking to them about what inbound is and yada, yada, yada. The relationship is on one level. When then the next week we turn up to actually do the work and it's also me doing the work, then that relationship shifts slightly. So I go from being on a level with them to being slightly below them in their mind, because now I'm not an equal business owner, advisor, consultant. Now I'm a service provider. And it shifts very, very subtly, right? And maybe I only spot it because I used to be an MD in a big newspaper and a big radio station. And I know the way people treat people is different depending on where they perceive you are hierarchically, like George says. If you're at the top, people treat you better, don't they?
Yeah.
Right. So that then becomes a disadvantage, Neo, if you want to start to talk to bigger businesses. Because I don't really, I want people like you to be doing the work that we can get bigger business,
People go to the gym to work for you.
Exactly.
So, any advice that you'd have for recent market graduates that are looking for graduate positions?
Yeah. So you did ask, George. You did ask. So let's circle back to that. So we're about to employ BDRs, as we call them in the trade, which is business development representative. And I personally a big believer in hiring for attitude and training for skills, right? So you hire the right person and you get them to do the things that you need them to do. I think it's increasingly the case in employment today, but I don't think it's everywhere yet. Some people will look for experience because experience is a shortcut to say, yes, this person can do the thing. Whatever the thing is, if you say, yeah, well, I flipped burgers for 2 years, then a burger restaurant is going to say, great, yeah, you're going to know what you're going to fit right in. Or if you go in and you say, I delivered newspapers or whatever it is, the owner or the employer is able to say, great, okay, so there's a shortcut, there's a code But in sales particularly, and in marketing especially, there's a lot of creativity. And I think if there's any tips, one single tip for students I would give is to focus on your creativity and the type of creativity you offer, because there's three types of jobs out there in the world, right? There's what they call head jobs, which are traditional university output, right? So doctors and lawyers and scientists and all that sort of stuff, right? And everybody is brought up that's what you should aim for. You go into school, you progress through school to secondary, you progress to tertiary, you progress to higher education, all to try and get a head job, all to become a lawyer or an accountant or whatever it's going to be, right? The trouble is those jobs are increasingly few and far between. The trouble is all the universities in the country are spitting out candidates for those jobs. So those jobs are extremely difficult to get. On the other hand, there's what they call heart jobs, right? In our world, caring jobs, right? Jobs that allow you to demonstrate that part of you, to fulfill that part of you, because we need carers, cookers, cleaners, lookers after of people, therapists, and so on and so on, you know? And we look down on those jobs, which is totally the wrong thing to do, because, you know, the people who looked after my granddad when he was on his last legs, they were awesome as far as I'm concerned. They were amazing people, right? And they had so much care to give, you know. I know we hear horror stories and what have you, but generally speaking, these people are just like mad. They're insane. Why do they even do it, you know? Because they're carers, right? And the third type of jobs, and this is the funniest one, is a hand job. Don't laugh, Neo. The hand job are jobs that you do with your hands, right? So engineering jobs, fixing, building, making. And there are millions of those jobs. If you look out of the window today, you know, you can't get a plumber. You can't get one. Where are you going to get a plumber from? And if I knew now, then, if I knew then what I knew now, and I was going into business, I would probably train for a trade, even though I went in and did physics and then ended up doing marketing and so on. Because now I'm running my own business, which I truly believe I want to do. That's what I was meant to do. I'd rather run a business where there was the demand for my services, like plumbing or building, carpentry, electricity, or millions of other things that you can do with your hands, you know, hand jobs, as Neo likes to call them. They're massively in demand, right? So you've got to think broader than just that path, the sausage factory path that you're on if you're in university. I got to get the best grades, I got to because I'm competing with all these people all trying to get these hedge. When there's all these other jobs out there that you can be massively successful in, especially if you want to run your own business. And that's where the entrepreneurialism and the creativity comes out there.
I actually like your example because a month ago,
because you like hand jobs.
Not only that, but my drain got clogged, and a plumber came here, and my landlord had to like cough up 70 quid to fix it for a 5-minute job.
Yeah. It's insane. So when I was in school, right, one of the reasons I dropped out of school the first time at college, say because I was skint. A mate of mine at the time, he was a little bit younger than me, but we were on more or less, he was also in school. He was on an apprenticeship. He was doing a degree apprenticeship, right, which is a slightly different thing to what I was doing. So I was basically in school, frying my brain. He was out learning how to do things. He was in the classroom and then he was going out, and he became a full-on electrician. He became and he ended up working on oil rigs. When I was still scraping by, he was minted, rolling in it, even as a young man. And I mean, I think he's still, I don't know what he's doing now. I haven't spoken to him for a while, but he was with a big organization. You know, he was working at the top of his trade. It's absolutely, and this is where the creativity comes in, George. I was talking about, you know, in my business, I want creative people. I want people who are going to be able to spot an opportunity and then take the opportunity, right? I don't want people who are going to sit there and wait to be told what to do, because I don't have time to do that, and nobody has time to do that, especially not in our business. But the same thing goes for your personal career, right? Don't just look at the sausage factory and say, yeah, I got my A-levels, now I'm going to get my 2-1, then I'm going to go and, you know, well, I'm going to stay in school because there's no jobs. Look broader, be more creative. What do I love doing? Do I prefer working with my head? Do I prefer working with my heart? Am I a caring person? Or do I prefer hand jobs?
Okay. That was brilliant. Thank you. Just a final question from me, and then Neo can elaborate if he has anything else. I was going to see, like, you might not know the answer to this, but I was going to see, like, how do you see digital marketing evolving in the near future?
I know the answer to everything. George, you should know that by now. Right. I think that tell you what, this is such an awesome question, right? So how is digital marketing going to evolve? Digital marketing is going to become increasingly customer driven, right? We hate adverts, we always have. We're increasingly having the technology that allows us to avoid them anyway. So adverts are increasingly less effective. What's the right way around of putting that? they don't work worse than they didn't work before. No, I find anyway.
What you mean. Yeah.
It's getting harder to make paid for advertising, especially work, right? Experience is increasingly the differential. Customer service is increasingly the differential. So this is very interesting. 80% of businesses consider customer service is their main point of difference in the marketplace, right? If you look at what customers say, on the other hand, that doesn't tally up. Customers don't agree that businesses put customer service first. So there's a gap there. And the ones that do provide great service win. They do. But they use the web to provide that service. They use things like self-serve. They use things like data. They use things like automation, CRM systems, and so on to offer this fantastic service to the customers in a way that they couldn't do it before. So that's the way digital marketing is going to go. Business is going to follow. Business is going to become increasingly online. There will always be a place for our hand jobs. Even if we're on our computers, we still need electricians, we still need plumbers to unblock our toilets and all those kinds of things, civil engineers to build bridges and roads. You know, I'm not just talking about trades, we're talking about massive industry sectors here, right? There's always a place for that. But business, in terms of commerce, in terms of retail, in terms of leisure, in terms of all these things, is increasingly going to be driven by the customer experience. And where you get a great experience is where you will spend your money. Where you get great experience is going to be the people most invested in technology, most understanding of digital and the way digital works. So digital marketing will become less about interruption and it'll become more about permission. It'll become more increasingly about inbound. It'll become about making yourself available, providing great value upfront, and providing the customer with a fantastic experience.
It's a thing called like emotional marketing. Like they're going to play with your emotions. I learned that yesterday.
Well, listen, all purchase decisions are emotional decisions, right? And apparently there's a stat, I used to quote it all the time. 92% of all purchase decisions are based on emotion. I don't know whether that's actually true or not, but it feels about right, okay? Especially if you start to consider, you know, I always say to people, nobody ever bought anything they didn't want. And everybody goes, oh, what are you talking about? I'm always buying stuff that I don't want. Well, you know, you do want it or need it, even need it on some level, some emotional level, let's call it that, right? There's a hit, you know, the scrolling on the screens are designed to increase the dopamine, aren't they? You know, we feel good because we're constantly having a new this or a new that, and somebody's interacting and somebody's, you know, it's all emotion. It's all based on the body chemistry. So that's why experience is so important, you know, because what we're talking about here is emotion and experience are the same thing. You know, go on.
Oh, sorry for interrupting you. I usually do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So a fun fact is people tend to spend more money using the card rather than hard cash. So you don't realize you're spending money through card or contactless payment. And when you pay like £20 or I don't know, like 10 beers or whatever, it actually, you feel your money going away. But if it's contactless, you don't really feel it. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's what we call frictionless selling, right? The idea is to remove as much friction from the sales process as possible, because it's those friction points. So another one I used to say is, you know, people buy people. Everybody goes, yeah, people buy people. No, they don't. They clearly don't. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't have an Amazon, right? People buy people if they can. for sure. If you can deal with somebody that you prefer to deal with, then you're great, yeah. But if you want that thing, you'll deal with an idiot because you want that thing, right? So the example I always used to give was HMV. You guys probably don't even remember physical media, but we used to have to go into a shop. Can you imagine? To buy a record on black vinyl if you wanted to listen to music. It was bizarre experience. And invariably, the person behind the counter was an arsehole, right? Invariably, they were better than you. They looked on their nose. They were just, they were shoppy, right? But if you wanted that new Queen record or the new Slayer or the new Metallica, you just had to put up with it. You just had to put up with it. There was a ton of friction in that process, but we put up with it so we could get. Now I can go, oh, Metallica got a new album. I go to Apple Music and I click add, and it's on my playlist. That's frictionless. That's frictionless. What's interesting about it is the way it's disrupted the way we do business, the commercial side, right? So keep an eye out on Australia. They've just told Google that they need to pay for their news. They've told Facebook they need to pay for their news. If this had happened 10 years ago, I would still be in media. Because if you think about Google and Facebook's business model is to steal other people's content and serve it to customers. Just because the only reason is because they provided a more frictionless environment. They made it easier for me to consume the content. So I go there. But they've still stolen all this content. They just ripped it off from newspapers and magazines and everywhere and just put it on their portal, on their platform. And I went there because it was easier to do it. Now, if they've got to pay for that, it changes the whole dynamic. Because if they don't have captured eyeballs on their platform that they can sell advertising to, then they're screwed, right? So the only way they get the captured eyeballs is to put the content on that people want. If the only way they can get the content is to go back in time and pay for it, like newspapers and magazines and radio stations and TV stations and film companies and everybody else has to when they produce content, then that changes their whole dynamic. It changes their ability to make profit. It changes the way their shareholders look at the business. It'll change everything. And I genuinely believe it's going to happen. Because it should have happened 8-10 years ago when media just went, have our content. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, bring us eyeballs. Bring it because they thought they would be able to sell the advertising, but they didn't. Because I'm not going to go to Facebook and then go to the newspaper to read the content. I'm going to go to Facebook to read the content and then go to another piece of content and another piece of content because it's a frictionless experience.
Yeah.
So the newspaper gamble completely failed. If we put our content there, they'll come to it. Well, no, they didn't. They didn't, not least because the newspaper websites are shit as well, but that's another story. So if I've now got to pay for that content, everything changes. Or if the newspaper say, do you know what? You can't have my content. Like the Times. The Times says you can't have my content. If you want my content, you come in and you pay, you go through my paywall. Yeah, exactly. That's the way media is going to go as well. So there you go.
I'm happy that's happening actually. It's about time it happened.
Well, otherwise, what's going to happen? People have made a living out of their creativity for millions of years, right? Or thousands of years, from bloody bards in Wales, telling the sagas to ancient Greece, where everybody's familiar with ancient Greece and Homer and all these people, right? They made their living telling stories. They made their living moving from city to city and writing down their experiences. And well, if they weren't able to make their living, they wouldn't do it, would they? If creative people, musicians, artists, writers, if they can't make a living doing that thing, they're going to go and do something else, aren't they? They're not going to be creative. Nobody, the vision of the tortured, poor artist is a very compelling vision. And I can see Neo is a bit like that.
So you mentioned tortured. So I have another question for you.
Yes, sir.
Specific to you. So a lot of students are finding difficulties on what's going to happen in the future. They feel like they're not going to get a job. Do you have any time in your career where you're feeling really down that you wouldn't find a job, that everything was stacked against you, especially now during COVID-19, all of us students which are going to go in the market, we're like, am I going to get a job? Would they want me? Am I good enough? And how do you deal with that controversy?
Well, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is all the time. And as a salesperson, particularly, it's a weird old place to be a salesperson because you judge yourself on your ability to hit target, which if you think about it is an arbitrary number somebody else has made up, right? And if you hit target, you feel good. And if you miss target, you feel bad. And if you hit 3 targets, you feel really good. If you miss 3 targets, you feel really bad. But the bizarre part is, if the owner of the business you're working for, if you're missing targets, if the owner reduces your target, you likely hit the target and then feel good again. It's such a weird, it doesn't matter how much money you're billing. It doesn't matter how much money you're bringing in. Just the fact that you're hitting that target and you're getting that kick is the thing, right? So I've always been driven like that. And that means I'm constantly searching for the next achievement. I'm constantly searching for the next target. And then as soon as I've hit it, I'm off it and I'm looking for the next one again. I'm constantly driven that way, right? So that's not a very healthy place to be. So the way I cope with it, and sometimes that's really badly, right? Even to the point where at my lowest, I've had to go and get help. I've had to have help from the doctors. I've had to have medicine because it's very, very scary place to be. When you look up and you say, I mean, it's worse for you lot because you're all young. If I look up, I've only got another 30 or 40 years to go. You guys look up, you've got your whole lives ahead of you, right? So I'm not ashamed to say that I've had to go and get help for it. But what I will tell you is I feel better when I'm doing something about it. Sitting back or bending over and letting life give you one in the Greek manner is not the is not the way to go, right? Grabbing it and it doesn't. And you know what? The other thing I've learned, right? You don't have to have the right plan. You just have to have a plan. Because every plan is the right plan. Just do the plan until the situation presents itself and you change the plan. Because the plan, put another way, will never be the right plan. And if you sit back and wait for everything to be right, it will just never happen. It will just never happen. So the only thing that makes me feel better is being what I call proactive, not positive, right? Positivity is bullshit. Putting a big smile on your face is crap. You know, looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a tiger. That's not going to get you anywhere, right? Being proactive, which is saying, okay, I'm in control of my destiny. I'm in control of the things that happen to me. I'm in control of the way I react to the things that have happened to me. That's mentality of success.
Mentality of success.
Yep. Well, maybe so. I read it a long time ago in a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by a guy called Dr. Stephen Covey. And the first habit was proactivity. And the difference between what he calls the character ethic and the personality ethic. And the personality ethic is Gary Vaynerchuk, you know? It's like, yeah, and people go in. I always remember watching him, somebody shouting in through the taxi window. It's obviously staged like all of his videos, right? But it looks like somebody just shouts in, hey, Gary, give me 3 words to motivate me. And he fixes them with his Gary V stare and he goes, you're gonna die. and the woman goes, oh, that's amazing. Oh, fantastic. And the point he was trying to make was you're going to die, right? So, you know, you're going to die. You've got to do something, dude, because you're going to die. At some point, you'll have run out of road, right? And you're going to die. But that's personality ethic, right? Because that one will have to come back to Gary V next week for another top-up, another motivational rah, 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 rah speech. Whereas Covey talks about, and your mentality of success, Neo, is about it being in here. It's based on your character. It's based on your values, right? My values are to provide. My values are to be authentic. My values are to allow everybody dignity. And within my value set, I'll go and do the things that I need to do in order to try and be successful.
I have another question. If George doesn't have a question as well to ask.
No, go ahead.
I think it's going to benefit especially young entrepreneurs because I've been through this a lot. Like we're saying that we need to be entrepreneurs and everything. And a lot of the times we don't want to be entrepreneurs by ourselves. We want to bring people aboard with us with different thinking, different skills. And it's so hard to find the right people. Like I'm supposedly an entrepreneur from a young age. And I swear to God, I've never, ever found somebody who were like, oh, this is a perfect match for me as a partner or as an investor. What do you advise and how did you like pick Mark to be your partner in your startup?
Yeah, I wish you were this bright 6 months ago when we first met. That's a brilliant question. So what you're talking about here is what I call it chemistry, right? In the media and the marketing world, we call it chemistry. We talk about the way people mix and catalyze and what comes out of it, right? And in a bigger organization, it's my job as the MD to make sure that that chemistry works. And this is why you get the situations where you may have somebody who's really good at their job losing their job because they don't fit. And alignment and fit is one of the most important things in business. And this is why for students coming out, this is why that attitude piece is so important, because until you can show somebody that you do fit, you have to act like you fit. You have to pretend that you fit. Because if I've got a team of more than 10 people, the last thing I'm going to do is bring in an outsider who's just going to upset everything. Unless that's literally what I want to do, because I've done that as well, right? I want to bring somebody in who's going to fit and who's going to move the whole thing forward. And when you come down to micro level, and you come down to partnerships like me and Mark, as you mentioned, there's much more, I would say, it's much more balanced, it's much more even, it's much more difficult to manage that, right? There are things me and Mark do not agree on. The thing that we have is the chemistry. We've known each other for a very long time, and the ability to talk to each other without punching each other in the face. So, neither of us are especially aggressive people, right? So if there is a problem, it usually gets talked about, not necessarily straight away, but it usually gets talked about and therefore dealt with. So that was something I chose, if you like, and Mark chose in me, was our ability to just get on. But you're absolutely right. So I just did an Adobe creativity thing this morning. It was, what type of creative type are you? And I come out as a visionary, right? And one of the things it says is you need a thinker, because while you're a visionary, you're off and you have a gajillion ideas, all of which you want to go and do. You need somebody who's actually, and that's a perfect description of if you are going to collaborate, is you have to look at the strengths, you have to look at what you need for your business to succeed. So if you are the visionary, don't hire another visionary. Hire an innovator or a thinker or a maker or somebody who's actually going to. So I always said I'm a much better leader than I am a follower. I'm a much better manager than I was a salesperson. I'm not a bad salesperson by any stretch. I was very successful, but I was better at getting other salespeople to do what I wanted them to do than I was doing it myself. Right, so you really need to know your strengths and know that mix. And the only thing I would say is just be careful. If you find that you clash with everyone, you don't want to go all Ted Bundy on everybody, do you? Just where do you have to make those allowances, right? What is it about your personality or about your vision or your drive that precludes you employing other people? Because you will need to collaborate. And it's another great way. One of the reasons me and Mark wanted to get together was so that we could give each other support, because it's tough and a problem shared and all that sort of stuff. It's easier to have people within your organization to talk to, even if it's just a collaborator, even if it's just a freelancer. It's much easier than doing it on your own. It's a heavy old load to lift that on your own.
Brilliant. Neil, you have any other questions?
Not really, but I think that was a pretty cool interview.